Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of the Heather Wells Connection, the Heather Wells Brain Balance Show. It's not really, folks. I'm just messing around. But listen, my name's Corey. I am a brain balance parent, and my son's been through the program for 9 months. I have 3 awesome kids, and I always love helping Heather host these shows. Heather Wells is a board-certified cognitive specialist and also a past speaker at the National Autism Summit, which I think is really appropriate for today's episode, because today we are talking about kind of the relationship between autism, ADHD. Is there one? Isn't there one? And to do that, we brought in our friend Emily. Emily Pullin is an RN. She is an autism mom warrior, and definitely has some thoughts to share and some advice, hopefully, for some of our parents who are stuck at home with some of those awesome kids. And with that, I'm going to take a step back and kind of give the floor to Heather and let this thing go. The floor is yours, Heather.
Thanks, Corey. Emily, thank you for joining us today. For everyone out there, I met Emily at Bryan's house. It's just an incredible nonprofit. I love the work they do. I was conducting a training, and I saw the look on Emily's face while I was presenting, and I'm like, this woman has a story that is resonating with her today. And we talked afterwards, and I think we both knew that we had found a friend for life. And so Emily, like Corey said, she's not only an RN, she is raising a son on the autism spectrum and a daughter who's been diagnosed with ADHD. So Emily, why don't you kind of start off telling a little bit about Bryan's house and the great work that y'all do?
All right. So Bryan's House is a nonprofit organization that provides many different services to different children and families in need. So they provide case management, and we have certified social workers, and we also provide childcare and just various case management services throughout the greater Dallas area.
But I love that the respite care that you provide. And on Thursday, Corey and I talked about self-care for parents and how important it is to take care of ourselves while we're so busy taking care of our kids. So that's just one of the many things y'all do that's really special. And people need to know that that's out there. So not only do you have kids facing some struggles, you have some of your own. So can you kind of talk about some of the sensory issues you've shared with me that you have faced over your life?
Definitely. So as a child, I was incredibly clumsy. Probably would be diagnosed with dyspraxia if I was evaluated, which I wasn't at the time. I feel like there was not really a lot of information out there about that kind of thing.
And let me step in real quick. Dyspraxia, for anyone who doesn't know, is a motor planning challenge that's very tied to the sensory motor system. So go ahead. I just wanted people to know what that meant.
So basically, I tried to do drill team, and I was terrible. I struggled a lot with learning the different dances and the different moves, and I dropped things constantly, literally almost every day. And I basically had a really hard time learning how to drive because of all the motor planning involved in that. And also even just becoming a nurse. I've been a nurse for almost 15 years now, and learning the different skills that go with nursing was very hard for me, physically hard.
The meat and potato stuff, right? The hands-on stuff.
The stuff that you do every single day in nursing.
Right. And, when you were talking about some of the challenges you had, people on here have heard me say before, my dad used to always say Heather would trip over a toothpick. And they just thought I was clumsy, when in fact I had equilibrium issues. I was legally blind. I had tumors in my brain. And so some of the stuff you're describing, like catching a ball, that has to do with equilibrium and visual processing and knowing where that ball is in relation to what's coming towards you. Same thing with driving. So go ahead, but there's just, I think we're related and we just didn't know it.
Exactly. I feel that way also. The ball thing, same thing with me. PE class was horrible. I would duck and cover. And I was never really athletically inclined. I didn't discover any kind of physical activity really that I liked until my early 30s when I discovered hiking. So
hiking is good. It takes the visual perception out of it a little bit. But this also goes to the point that this plays out differently in different people, because I was very athletic, and that's why it was confusing to my parents. Because like from a motor standpoint, I was so athletic, but then I would have these, they always called me a klutz. I would spill things, break things all the time, and it just wasn't adding up. And so just knowing that these things can look different, everyone has a combination of strengths and weaknesses that make the manifestations look a little bit different.
Exactly.
So with all of these challenges that you've had your whole life, how did you manage to become an RN? I know it wasn't easy, right?
Oh, it definitely wasn't easy. There was some parts that were a little bit easier. I have a photographic memory and just a really good memory, surprisingly. And, so studying the material, that was not a problem. I could even do clinical simulations on the computer where it's like click, 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 click. And, I know exactly what to do. It's just actually being there and planning out my physical actions that I struggle with. So I would say just practice, 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 determination, a lot of prayer, a lot of family support, all those things.
Right. And you also, you shared, and that's what we do when we have challenges. It's really cool that we can compensate. I do not have a photographic memory, not even close. And in fact, a lot of our kids struggle with that, because if they don't understand the whole and the parts and how things go together, they have to rely so heavily on memorization, because they can't just see, oh, this is why it's this way. But you had that memory to back you up. But one thing I want to stress to everyone is anytime we are having to compensate, it takes a toll in some other way. It impacts quality of life. And I know that you've had even some physical challenges autonomically from kind of the churn that you've been in. So will you share some of that?
Definitely. So basically my whole adult life, I have had autoimmune diseases in one form or the other. And in 2007, I was diagnosed with autonomic dysfunction and this thing called postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which is basically when I stand up, my autonomic nervous system can't handle it. And so my heart rate speeds up, my blood pressure drops. And so it's something I've been struggling with for about 13 years now. And we recently found out I have elevated histamine, and that I've been having a lot of allergy type symptoms, but I don't really have allergies. And I feel like the stress of everything plays into that and really aggravates that.
And it does. And I want to make that connection for people. If you've ever heard me talk with Dr. Mark Musso or Dr. Bryan Aspie on these shows we do 3 times a week, when your sensory motor system is taking in signals incorrectly, a lot of times the guard dog of the brain that we all have that keeps us safe. Hey, somebody's coming up on me in a dark parking lot, and we get into fight or flight mode. Our adrenaline goes up and our blood, our oxygen rushes to survival mode. Mm-hmm. When we have sensory motor challenges that are making us churn, it kicks in our fight or flight system, even if we are not in danger. And it impacts our immunity, our autoimmunity. These things are completely tied together. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to make that connection. We know scientifically that when you are in a fight or flight, we get in a fight or flight mode due to sensory motor challenges, and it can take a toll on our mental well-being and usually some level of both, sometimes our physiological well-being. So thank you for sharing that. And I know that I think we both have talked about we can be jumpy at times, and everybody's like, what are you squealing about? But you're in a bit of a heightened state. I still have visual perception and processing challenges that people don't realize I have. I was blind. I have physiological limitations, which I'm glad I had them, because they've equipped me to understand the kids and the families we work with on another level. And I feel like you found the blessing in this too. What is it for you?
I would feel like for me, really understanding where my son's coming from, since he has autism and has sensory challenges, and I also have sensory challenges. Sometimes wonder if I don't have a touch of autism. Don't know. Haven't been diagnosed. But, with the sensory challenges, I definitely can relate to him. And I can really just explain to others kind of what's going on with him. And also really help him understand kind of what's going on and why. Because I know kind of the background, more of the medical therapeutic side of it, also in addition to living it.
Yeah. There are certain things you can't learn in a textbook, right? There's a depth of empathy that you can have because of what you've been through. Mm-hmm. So, all right, let's talk about Gabby, your daughter. Tell us, what is she like? Not just what her challenges are. Tell us who she is as a human being, and also what some of her strengths and challenges are.
Okay, so Gabby will be 10 next month, and she is one of the sweetest, most compassionate little girls that I've ever met. And she's just amazing. She's amazing to me. Of course, she's my daughter, so that's a given that I think she's amazing and wonderful. But
I've seen notes she writes to you that are really special. She's precious.
Thank you. She's very eager to please. I have noticed, with the ADHD and the different things that she struggles with, that she does have rejection sensitivity. And when we try to discipline her, all of a sudden she automatically goes to, oh, you don't love me. You don't care about me. So that's something kind of hard to deal with a little bit. And
just one second. I'm so glad you brought that up. Rejection sensitive syndrome. A lot of you have heard me talk about this before. 98 to 99% of adolescents and adults diagnosed with ADHD say they have rejection sensitivity syndrome. I think I even had a slide of that at one of those trainings I did at Bryan's house. And I showed a cartoon of this little boy who's gotten all of these positive comments all day. And there was one comment where someone said, you can kind of be a jerk sometimes. And then he's at dinner, and that is the only thought out of everything he's heard all day that's still on his mind. And then he's laying in bed at night, not sleeping, because he's kind of ruminating on that comment. So with rejection sensitivity syndrome, a lot of times their happy years are more exuberant, but their feelings of rejection are much more profound, and they have a harder time moving past them, and sometimes have difficulty separating what they do from who they are. And so we want to be sure to nurture their character growth and development, and focusing on processes and perseverance and strategies, as opposed to comments like, I'm so proud that you made a 98 on that test. Of course, you're going to be happy about that. But if we focus on, you were MVP of the game, you made this grade, that says I have to earn your approval by the accomplishment I make, instead of I'm enough because of who I am in my heart and soul. And 30% of people with rejection sensitivity say it is the most debilitating part out of all the challenges they face. So thank you for bringing that up.
You're welcome. Definitely. I try with Gabby to give her a lot of positive reinforcement and a lot of opportunities to do a great job with different things, and just to really emphasize that. I mean, sometimes you feel like you're being over the top. I don't need as much positive feedback personally. Right. She does. And so I try to always make sure and give that to her, and give her things to do that make her feel a part of the family.
What's an example of something you do to help her realize her important role in the family?
Well, I have her help me cook, and she loves to cook. So that's a really good one. And even just cleaning up the dishes and the table, she likes to set the table for us. That's one of her favorite things to do. And, just different things like that.
That giving kids chores not only teaches them responsibility, it really does help them feel like a contributing member of the family, and giving them say on what the schedule is. I mean, mom and dad are in charge, but giving everyone a voice is really important. And instead of just talking about the grade, it can be, you know what, I know that you kind of hit a roadblock here. I'm so proud of how you persevered. The book you wanted wasn't available, but you had such a sweet attitude and you picked another book and you're enjoying reading that one. Why did you choose to write about this topic? Why did you choose this book? Those are very objective measures that show you're interested in their thoughts and what makes them tick. So just even objective feedback like that, and you're also helping them create their own sense of identity and really get to know who they are apart from the roles they play. So that's awesome.
I was going to say there's one more thing that's been really helpful to me personally. I had found some information regarding childhood emotional neglect and about not validating feelings and how much that can really cause a negative impact with someone even into adulthood. So every time that the kids are upset about something or hurt or even mad at me because they got in trouble, whatever it is, I try to at least validate the feeling. Like, I'm sorry that you were feeling that way, but we have to follow the rules. That's why you got in trouble. Or what?
That's huge. That is such a huge point. I talk on here all the time about validating feelings. I'm a broken record about that because it's so important. A lot of times, if you have a child who's struggling and having meltdowns or getting angry and hitting a sibling, we're going to have this fun outing with the family, and you're like, slap a smile on your face. You're not going to ruin this for the family. If that child is not feeling that way, what we are doing is we are telling them to be inauthentic.
Exactly.
Your feelings don't matter. Just slap a smile on your face. It comes from a well-meaning place where it's like, okay, I'm going to be positive, and you might be doing the same thing. I'm slapping a smile on my face, even though I'm really stressed out that he's going to make a scene and it's exhausting. But we can tell them to put it in neutral, but talk about all the rainbow of emotions and that we also have them, some things that make us feel frustrated, and then they don't feel shamed by them. That's part of human nature, is to have a rainbow of emotions. It's normal to get frustrated and sad, and to not just talk about all the happy emotions. Dr. Kashdan, Kashdan, has a book called The Upside of Your Dark Side, and where you're really cultivating them appreciating all the parts that make them who they are. So that's a great point too. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the challenges that Gabby faces?
Well, so I know we were talking about this last week. I had suspected dyslexia, but I know that there's something going on with the reading and the writing and the spelling and the phonics and things like that. That's really, I would say, the biggest one academically. She's very, up to date and where she needs to be with math and different things like that, except for word problems, which again, that comes with the language and things like that with the reading and the writing. I would say that, and really staying in her seat and staying on task. That's the big things that we struggle with Gabby.
And the impulsivity and the sustaining focus are grounded in self-regulation. That is one of our earliest executive functions, getting stuff done, tasks that we have. And you reached out to me. This is a good point for families too, because you reached out to me and let me know that they did dyslexia testing at school, and she did not test positive for dyslexia, and then they put her in the dyslexia program. And sometimes that helps anyway, because you're getting some one-on-one support and things get paced better, but it's not going to get to the foundational issues. And so good for you. I looked over some samples, and there's definitely visual perception and processing challenges at play. So that's a huge takeaway for parents out there. If some schools, just because they are trying to, we don't want kids to fall through the cracks. They didn't test positive for dyslexia, but they reverse letters. So let's put them in the dyslexia program. Dyslexia is language and auditory processing based. But if my eyes are skipping around, which is one of the many challenges I had as a child, you reverse letters because you perceive them visually in a different order. And so while it might help some, without us taking care of that for Gabby, we're still not helping her thrive and live her highest quality of life. So, so impulsivity, we got to work on self-regulation and even primitive reflexes. A lot of the symptoms of sensitivity with clothing and so forth, and many things you described. So even none of us has all the answers. You have a medical background, but we rely on each other, and pick each other's brains. And so it's really good to have a support system, and don't just take the first answer you get necessarily as the be all end all. So that's a really good takeaway that you've demonstrated in the way you are a parent. Anything else you want to share about her before we start talking about your son?
I would say the clothing thing that you brought up, I know we had talked about that, about the pants. I wish that sometimes I could get her to wear jeans. I'm to the point I don't even buy jeans. We just buy the comfy pants, and that's what she wears. And it's not worth the battle for me personally.
Yeah, that most likely, based on many symptoms you gave me, is based on a survival mechanism we're born with called the spinal galant. And so we got to work through that with her to that will impact kids' sensitivity to tags and seams and certain types of clothing,
all of that.
and the sitting still, because it has to do with stimulation of the spine, and it can also impact digestion and quality of sleep, because my bed is stimulating my back too. Even if I lay on my stomach, the covers will stimulate. So it's all about not just what the symptoms are, but get to the root, address it at the foundation. We have to know why those things are happening to really take care of it for our kids. But she's a good volleyball player. You're giving her opportunities to express herself in the ways that she is shining. So let's hear about your son.
All right. So Josh has the biggest heart of anybody that I've ever met. He's a super sweet kid. He's very matter of fact in a lot of things. So he's very blunt, but that comes with the autism. He'll be 16 in May. Also, I have 2 May babies. So one will be, Gabby will be 10, Josh will be 16. So they're 6 years apart.
Will you share what delayed his diagnosis many years ago? Because I think this is a really important point. You talked about the ear infections.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Definitely. So when Josh was a baby, he started getting a lot of ear infections pretty quickly. I think his first one, he was maybe 6 months old. So we had a lot of ear infections, a lot of runny nose, and, just a lot of allergy type symptoms. And basically we were putting him on antibiotics back to back to back. He had a lot of problems tolerating his formulas. And so we thought that when he got a little bit older and wasn't talking, that it was from fluid in his ears. And so we did still seek intervention. At the time, I wasn't even a nurse yet. I was actually in nursing school. And we had him do ECI, early childhood intervention, and get some speech therapy and different things trying to help him to talk. And so from a lot of people, we kept hearing, oh, he can't hear well. He has fluid in his ears. When you get tubes, all this is going to go away. That's all it is. And so we had a couple of sets of tubes, and really speech wasn't happening very much for us until probably almost 5 years old. I was between 4 and 5.
I wanted you to bring this up, and I want you to keep going. But the reason this is really important is it is so easy to excuse away that made sense, because a lot of ear infections can delay speech development because it's coming in garbled, and so then I can't reproduce it. Mm-hmm. But you kind of came about the diagnosis in a little bit of a roundabout way.
Anyway, so we took Josh at one point just to the pediatrician for a checkup, and they said, wow, he has a hairy back. He has a little patch of hair right here. Have you ever noticed this? And I'm like, well, yeah, but we didn't think anything of it. And she said, I think it would be a good idea for you to have him evaluated with a neurologist, just to make sure that this little patch of hair, I guess maybe she was afraid of spinal bifida occulta. Now being a nurse, like hidden spina bifida, I'm thinking that's what maybe she was thinking. And so when we went to the neurologist, they actually said, oh, the little patch of hair is just a little patch of hair, but we think he might have autism. So that's kind of first experience with him, he was 2, and they said pervasive development disorder, which is basically, oh, we think he might have autism. He has some autistic type traits. For right now, we'll say pervasive development disorder. So,
yeah. So every parent out there, I want you to give yourself permission for not knowing what you don't know.
exactly.
You know, right? You don't know these things until you know them. And so, you know, my parents didn't know I was legally blind and had tumors for years because I was doing a good job of compensating, but I was in an internal churn that impacted quality of life. I was living in constant fight or flight, and they didn't know it because I was not lashing out. I was not emotionally labile, just a roller coaster. I was sweet. I was well behaved. And so they did not know. They just thought I was a klutz. But anytime I'm compensating, that is going to it's going to take out of a different bucket. And so I was not able to pick up on so many cues in the environment. I was not learning all the building blocks that we keep building on throughout life. So, but they didn't know. And I'm not mad at them for not knowing. As soon as they did, they took care of me. They sought the help I needed. And that's exactly what you did. And for anyone out there, if you do have kids who are not engaging, you know, the language isn't coming. Language and communication are motivated by my social emotional intelligence. I want to talk with you because I care about you. I want to know what you think, how you feel, how are you doing, how's your family. I don't talk to you because I have to. It's not compliance. That drives behavior too. Emotion precedes behavior. So in kids on the spectrum, almost always, if not always, they are struggling with that social emotional connection first that leads them to talk. And so we can model language all day long, but if we don't get under the hood and take care of social emotional development, and by the way, on Friday, I did a Facebook Live with Dr. Bryan Aspie, and we did a deep dive on social emotional connection and language development for kids on the spectrum, as well as some other diagnoses too, if you want to check that out. But go ahead, keep going. Let's hear, you know, kind of more about what's his challenges are and have been.
So another thing that kind of threw me off with Josh was that he was very affectionate, and being a person at the time that didn't know much about autism, you know, whenever, you know, we kind of started to suspect something more, and then obviously got that, you know, diagnosis from the neurologist, we were pretty floored because he was so affectionate. And we thought, well, people with autism, you think Rain Man and no affection, flat affect, and that wasn't the case. So it can look a lot different than
it sure can. And a lot of times, even if they have trouble with social connection, they're affectionate in a physical way because they're seeking sensory input. Being held makes them be able to make sense of this little, I can't make space of everything in this room, but when you hold me, then I only have to make sense of what's right here. Sometimes it's a sensory seeking behavior also that can really, every single child is different. We have sensory seeker, sensory avoidant. I can be sensory seeking from a tactile and proprioceptive, and sensory avoidant with light or sound, that kind of thing.
So another thing, I was going to say another thing that we have is with Josh, especially, is it's really hard to get him to eat vegetables and different foods with certain textures because he'll gag or vomit if he tries to eat that. So it's a fine line between having him try new things and, you know, kind of having him not upset or gagging. So I understand, and you know, how hard that could be. And so what I do, which he even tells me to do, which is kind of funny, like we'll hide the vegetables in something. And as long as it's hidden enough to where he doesn't get much of that texture, then he's fine. It's not the vegetable itself. He actually looks at the vegetable and says, wow, I know that's healthy. I wish I could eat that. I just can't do it. Can you hide it?
That's
stuff. We hide it.
That's a great tip. But the issue with texture, a lot of times, I mean, that is more of a tactile thing. But kids also will gag or sometimes even throw up with foods based on they're undertaste or they're an overtaste, or the sense of smell is off, which is very tied to memory creation, emotional connection, and digestion, by the way. But being creative like that, sometimes for little ones, I know he's 16, but for little ones, even cutting foods into fun shapes with like cookie cutters will make them try something because it's visually interesting. Or if they're young and they're in a high chair, you can put saran wrap or something over different foods and have them play with them where it doesn't make a mess, but they're getting exposed to those textures before you're doing the baby step up to getting them to actually try them. But you also said he's in cooking, he's in a culinary class, right?
Yes.
And that's helped too?
Yes. So it's pretty funny, actually. He's a foodie like us. We love food in our family. And he likes stuff like lobster, shrimp, crab, sushi. He eats raw sushi.
The cheap stuff.
Exactly. Pho. He loves pho. He loves curries and things like that. So things you wouldn't really expect for a kid with autism when you say, oh, they're picky with food. He'll eat all these diverse things, but yet he won't eat casseroles. He won't eat soups, and he won't eat vegetables unless it's a salad. He'll eat a salad. So we eat a lot of salad here.
So, but that has been a years long journey with you, finding what works and all the different tricks. I mean, hiding the vegetable, and then even cultivating that by, he has this interest now in culinary. You said he even watches cooking shows, right?
Oh, yes. He loves watching cooking shows on YouTube. He loves Food Network. He loves Good Eats. Forever, when he was a little guy, he was probably 8 or 9, and he was asking us to get a lobster so he could cook a lobster.
So you used his sense of identity. You took an interest that he has, and that has helped with his healthy diet. I mean,
Yes,
you have nurtured his sense of self, and then it has led to a healthier diet that will also help his physiological growth and development. So, what is I know we've already been on here for quite a while, and I want to leave time for questions, but what are his biggest challenges with reading?
I would say for him, it's reading comprehension. Him and Gabby seem to have kind of opposite strengths. She struggles with the actual words and phonics and spelling and things like that. But if you read it to her, she gets the big picture of the story. Josh, he can read very fluently and very quickly, but he lacks the reading comprehension and really the in-depth and the inferences and really seeing what's going on in the story, the background.
That's such an important point, because for most kids on the spectrum, they do have more difficulty getting the big picture, the overriding theme, the takeaway, or the gist. They might be able to spout off all kinds of facts, figures, stats, details, but they do not know that the main takeaway, the life lesson, the parental wisdom was this. And so a lot of times we do have families come in, and I understand why they're saying it. Oh, the reading comprehension is very good. It is if it's on the literal concrete details, but then when they have to make inferences, like deduce information from the facts, that's where it falls down. And that is something we're expected to do in middle school, high school, and beyond. That's really a life skill.
Definitely.
It helps us create mental schemas where I see the big picture, and then I know how these pieces play into the big picture. Otherwise, I have facts, figures, details, but they are just floating out in space, disconnected, and they don't mean as much to me. So, any kind of anything else you want to share about him? Any kind of parent to parent or RN to parent information you kind of want to give them as a takeaway?
Something for Josh that really is helpful is giving him plenty of personal space and private time. I know a lot of families, they have so much stuff going on, and they have, they want to put their kids in a bunch of different sports, and sports are great, and Gabby does volleyball, but when you have a kid that needs a lot of downtime and a lot of personal space, it's good to give that to them. And I try really hard to make sure to balance his school load, especially now since we're homeschooling and we're home during all of this COVID-19 stuff. I've tried to really balance the whole schoolwork and being out with the family and stuff like that with his private time. I try to make sure that he has a lot of downtime, that he has a lot of time to really process.
All kids need that. That is such an excellent point, Emily. Thank you for sharing that. I was reading some research several months ago that was talking about how a lot of our kids' schedules look like the CEO of a corporation.
Exactly.
I mean, Monday dance, Tuesday soccer, Wednesday music, Thursday basketball, Friday softball. And our kids need downtime, even if they don't have sensory challenges, even if they are not diagnosed on the spectrum or with ADHD or any kind of learning challenges. And when we allow our kids free time, it allows them to be creative, curious. You know, we talk about mindfulness all the time. There's something to be said for those times to daydream and to explore without any rules. We learn so much about how to learn. We learn so much about the world, and we just can kind of recalibrate and get ready for the next thing. Mm-hmm. So I don't think there were as many extracurriculars available when I was growing up. It's great to have your kids involved, but they, just because it is available doesn't mean they need to do every single thing. And it's a good idea to sit down with them and set goals with them and ask them which one they enjoy the most, which one's their least favorite, and that kind of thing to help you make decisions about what to cut out. We talk about decluttering spaces so they're not overwhelming. We also need to declutter their lives because there's just too many balls on the court that I can't keep up with. So that was really good. Anything else that has been a great help with Gabby, or just a final thought you want to share?
I would just say for me, I think that really just, like I said before, with validating the feelings, you know, there's a lot of self-esteem issues that come along with ADHD, autism, sensory issues. I've had and still have self-esteem issues. I mean, there's a lot of issues where, you know, when you feel clumsy and you feel klutzy and you feel like, well, I can't read this or I can't get this right. There's a lot of feelings like that come up. And I try to really talk to the kids about those feelings and really just try to tell them, you know, how great they are all the time, and just really kind of help them with their self-esteem. I think that's a big one.
It is. You and I both had some labels for ourselves that we had either heard from other people, mm-hmm. or that we don't know why we're having these challenges, and they weren't identified. And so growing up, the first time my parents took me to the eye doctor, he said, "Tell me anything you can see on the chart." I couldn't see anything. So he just told my parents I was stupid. And so that delayed the help I got by about 2 more years. But I heard that from a doctor, and I would finish reading something and be like, I have no clue what I just read. I'm stupid. I'm a space cadet. This time I'm really going to pay attention. My eyes are jumping around. My whole focus is on be still so I can read you. I can't pay attention to the content. I felt like I lived in a horror flick with things popping up and things coming at me. And I didn't know why I was so drained all the time. Mm-hmm. And so nurturing that, social emotional books are excellent. Social stories are excellent for kids with autism. But letting them know, you know, playing emotion charades or emotion musical chairs, reading those books, pass the weighted beanbag, you know, having a family meeting on Sunday night where everybody, number one, you prep for the week, but you also can just kind of talk about what's on your mind. Everyone in the family needs a voice, and the more they have a voice, the less likely, and the more they're accepted and allowed to be authentic, the less likely it is to build up and then turn into bigger explosions later. So I think that's a really excellent point. And by the way, that overscheduling thing, that, you know, trying to keep up with all the balls, a lot of what looks like laziness, kids are not born lazy, or task aversion, task avoidance comes from anxiety. And if you have sensory motor issues, which both of your kids do, you do, that is absolutely one of the reasons why kids think why they avoid doing tasks. There is a reason underlying that is not just about just not wanting to do it, but it can mask in so many different ways. Corey, do we have any questions or not. I'm not sure. We can't hear
I was
you.
muted.
Okay.
That's about the only time, or else I was doing pantomime. No, sorry about that. Okay, so Renee, first of all, Renee has been watching, Renee Ledig, and I just wanted to say hi to her for sure. She said that social stories are great, as you can see. So she's really just been tuned in the whole time and just been really
She's awesome. She's a teacher. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. And then Jessica said, hey, so we wanted to say hey to Jessica.
Hi, Jessica.
And then Jawad said hello. And then we have Renee, just, a lot of good comments, just people agreeing with you guys and saying hi. And, you know, more friends of Heather saying hi. North Hall Kennel said hi.
Hi, North Hall.
So lots of great comments, and it seems like everybody really liked the show. So good stuff, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Emily, so much. I think you're my little sister that I just didn't meet until I was an adult.
I feel the same about you.
And thank you to Bryan's House also for everything you do for the families of our community. I am a huge fan and talk about y'all with everyone all the time. Just so grateful for who y'all are.
Where can we learn more about Bryan's House, Emily? Is there a website for you guys?
Yes. It's actually, let me look.
I put you on the spot.
It's just bryonshouse.com or .org.
I think it's .org.
Right,
I believe it's .org.
Right,
but also, if in Facebook also, if you just type Bryan's House, it's going to the page there too. It's going to pop up very easily. It's not. Sometimes there are like 10 things. You're like, which one is it?
And
that one pops right up.
YANS.
Yep, I got it. Here we go. Visit.
Definitely.
All right, check this out. I want to post it, and then I'll put it up on the screen so people can all see it. There it is. It is bryonshouse.org. So go check it out. It's in the comments, and guys, make sure you go check it out and support Bryan's House, especially as we get towards the end of the year and you're looking at your philanthropic funding and support. So thank you, guys. Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye,
and thank you, everyone, for watching.
Yes.
Bye, guys.
Bye.